If I had a hammer, Peter, Paul, and Mary. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh. This is the broadcast on the day after the Bradley Manning verdict was announced, that he was acquitted of aiding the enemy, but found guilty on a number of espionage-related and other charges. He faces 136 years in prison. The sentencing phase of the trial begins today, 9:30 Eastern Time, at Fort Meade, where the court-martial has taken place. Just after the Bradley Manning verdict was announced Tuesday, Associated Press reporter Matt Lee asked State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki to comment on the verdict. Let's go to a clip of their exchange.
What is the State Department's reaction to the verdict in the Manning trial?
Well, Matt, we have seen the verdict, which I know just came out right before I stepped out here. I would, beyond that, I would refer you to the Department of Defense.
Well,
no further comment from here.
For the entire trial, this building had said that it wouldn't comment because it was pending. It was a pending case. And now that it's over, you say you're still not going to comment?
That's correct. I would refer you to the Department of Defense.
Okay, can I just ask why?
Because the Department of Defense has been the point agency through
these were State Department cables, exactly. They were your property.
State Department employees. We just don't have any further comment. I know the verdict just came out. I don't have anything more for you.
Well, does that mean that are you working on a comment? Are you gratified that this theft of your material?
Matt, but if we have anything more to say, I promise everybody in this room, and then some will have it.
Okay, I'm a little bit surprised that you don't have any comment, considering the amount of energy and time this building expended on assisting the prosecution.
That's Associated Press reporter Matt Lee questioning State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki right after the verdict came down. Our interview continues with Julian Assange, founder and editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks. Your response to the U.S. government's lack of response, and what this means also, Julian, in your own case.
It's quite interesting to see the State Department doing that. The State Department has made many comments about this affair over the past 3 years, saying Secretary Clinton, for example, saying that this was, once again, an absurd piece of rhetoric, an attack on the entire international community by our publishing organization, and I assume by proxy, by our source, she would say. Well, look, this investigation against our organization is the largest investigation and prosecution against a publisher in the United States history, and arguably anywhere in the world. It involves over a dozen different government departments. The tender for the DOJ to manage the documents related to the prosecution, the broader prosecution against WikiLeaks and myself, and not just the Manning case, is $1 to $2 million per year just to maintain the computer system that manages the prosecution's documents. So I assume those sort of statements by the State Department are a mechanism to reduce the perception of their involvement, which has been extensive over the last 3 years.
I want to turn to comments made by Trevor Timm, who's the executive director of the Freedom of the Press Foundation, regarding your likely prosecutions or the consequences of Manning's verdict for you. He said, although he agreed that the verdict brings the government closer to prosecuting you, he said, quote, charging a publisher of information under the Espionage Act would be completely unprecedented and put every decent national security reporter in America at risk of jail, because they also regularly publish national security information. Julian Assange, your response?
I agree. We've been saying this for 3 years now. It's nice to see finally that in the past 3 months or so, the mainstream press in the United States, at least McClatchy and the New York Times, Washington Post has been a bit more problematic, have woken up to the reality of what this case means for all national security reporters and even more broadly for publishers. You know, the approach here has been to smash the insider and the outsider. There was only one name on the table for an insider, and that was Bradley Manning. There's only one organisation as the publisher, the outside force, that's WikiLeaks, and most prominently represented by me. So in order to regain a sense of authority, the United States government has tried to rather conspicuously smash Bradley Manning and also the WikiLeaks organisation. At least for WikiLeaks organisation, it has not succeeded. It will not succeed. It is bringing great discredit on itself. Its desire for authority, or perception of authority, is such that it is willing to be seen as an immoral actor that breaches the rule of law, that breaches its own laws, that engages in torture against its youngest and brightest. In the case of Bradley Manning, the UN formally found against the United States, the Special Rapporteur formally finding that the United States government had engaged in cruel and abusive treatment, cruel and inhumane treatment of Bradley Manning.
Julian Assange, I also want to ask you about NSA whistleblower Edward Snowden, who remains, as you know, at the Moscow airport, who you are deeply involved with helping to try to find a place of asylum. In a letter sent last week to the Russian Minister of Justice, the U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder assured Russia that Snowden will not be executed or tortured if he's sent back to the United States. Holder wrote, quote, "Mr. Snowden will not be tortured. Torture is unlawful in the United States." He went on to say, if he returns to the United States, Mr. Snowden would promptly be brought before a civilian court convened under Article 3 of the United States Constitution and supervised by a United States district judge. Holder also added, quote, "We believe these assurances eliminate these asserted grounds for Mr. Snowden's claim that he should be treated as a refugee or granted asylum, temporary or otherwise." Can you tell us what you understand to be the latest situation for Snowden and what your involvement with Edward Snowden is, why he is so significant to you, what his actions have been?
Edward Snowden's freedom is a very important symbol. Bradley Manning's incarceration is also an important symbol. Bradley Manning is now a martyr. He didn't choose to be a martyr. I don't think it's a proper way for activists to behave, to choose to be martyrs. But these young men, allegedly in the case of Bradley Manning and clearly in the case of Edward Snowden, have risked their freedom, risked their lives for all of us. That makes them heroes. Now, Bradley Manning has been put into a position, quite unjustly, where he's facing 136 years. That brings disrepute upon the United States government and upon its system of justice. Edward Snowden has seen what has happened to Bradley Manning. The Ecuadorian government in their asylum assessment of me looked at what happened to Bradley Manning. US guarantees about torture mean nothing. We all know that the United States government simply redefines its torturous and abusive treatment of prisoners, stress positions, a restriction on diet, extreme heat, extreme cold, deprivation of basic things needed for living, like glasses or the company of others. It simply redefines that as not being torture. So its word is worth nothing in this particular case. In relation to the death penalty, guarantees about the death penalty have more credence. But we wouldn't want Edward Snowden to be in a Jack Ruby type situation. That's quite a possibility for him, that if he ended up in the United States prison system, that given the level of vitriol that exists against him by the administration, that he would not be safe from police, he would not be safe from prison guards, and he would not be safe from other prisoners. There's no question that he would not. There's no question that he would not receive a fair trial. Similarly, the charges against him are political. There's only allegations on the table at the moment that he acted for a political purpose, to educate all of us. Those are the only allegations that exist. It is incorrect that extraditions should take place for a political purpose. He's clearly been exercising his political opinion. We've seen amazing statements by the White House in relation to Edward Snowden's meeting with Human Rights Watch based in New York, Amnesty International based in London, that should not have happened, that was a propaganda platform for Edward Snowden. I mean, this is incredible to see Jay Carney, White House spokesperson, denouncing Edward Snowden for speaking to human rights groups. Edward Snowden cannot possibly receive a fair judicial process in the United States under that basis. He has applied for asylum in a number of different countries. I believe that Russia will afford him asylum in this case, at least on a temporary or interim basis, and a number of other countries have offered.
Julian, what is the problem? Last week there was breaking news that Russia had granted him temporary asylum, but now it is said that he has never been given those papers, so he can't leave the airport lounge.
Well, this is just the media. This is a case where there's a lot of demand for information, so people just invent it, or they amplify some particular rumor.
Julian Assange, very quickly before we conclude, the U.S. government now classifies 92 million documents a year. This is an unprecedented number, with over 4 million people cleared for security clearance. Can you explain what you think the significance of this is and has been for whistleblowers, and what the Manning verdict says to future potential whistleblowers?
Well, the verdict is clearly an attempt to crush whistleblowers. It's not going to crush whistleblowers. The problems that exist in the security state in the West and a few other countries as well, as bad as they have ever been, they're rapidly accelerating. We now have a state within a state in the United States. There are more than 5 million people with security clearances, more than 1 million people with top secret security clearances. The majority of those 1 million people with top secret security clearances work for firms like Booz Allen Hamilton and so on, where they are out of the Freedom of Information Act, where they are out of the Inspector General of Intelligence's eye. That is creating a new system of information apartheid, a new asymmetry of information between different groups of people. That's leading to extensive power inequalities with the if you like, the essence of the state, the deep state, the intelligence community lifting off from the rest of the population, developing its own society and going its own way. And we have a situation now where young people like Edward Snowden, who have been exposed to the internet, who have seen the world, who have a perspective, who have seen our work, the work of allegedly of Bradley Manning and others, don't like that. They do not accept that. They do not accept that the US Constitution can be violated, that international human rights norms can be conspicuously violated, that this information apartheid exists. That system cannot continue. We even saw Michael Hayden acknowledge that in an interview in Australia recently, that in order to function, the National Security Agency, the CIA, and so on, has to recruit people between the ages of 20 and 30. Those people, if they're technical, they're exposed to the internet, they have a certain view about what is just, and they find that they're in their jobs, the agencies that they work for do not behave in a legal, ethical, or moral manner. So the writing is on the wall for these agencies.
Julian, I know you have to go, but I want to quickly ask one more time. What does the verdict in the Bradley Manning case, faces 136 years in prison, mean for you? Your name and WikiLeaks came up repeatedly throughout the trial. We know of a grand jury investigation of you and WikiLeaks in Virginia. Do you, in fact, know that there is a sealed indictment for you? And what does this mean for your time at the Ecuadorian embassy and your chance of getting out?
Based upon conversations with the DOJ, between my US lawyers and the DOJ spokespersons, we know a lot. We know that Neil McBride the Virginia DA has the grand jury process. My US lawyers believe that it is more probable than not that there is a sealed indictment that's the only explanation for the DA behavior. The DOJ has admitted that the investigation against me and WikiLeaks proceeds. In relation to the Manning verdict, we will continue to fight that. We have a lot of people now in this coalition. Bradley Manning's support team has been great. The Center for Constitutional Rights also been excellent. Michael Ratner, who's been on your own program. That team understands what is going on, has been deployed to a degree to defend Mr. Snowden in public, and presumably when the time comes, will also defend us. I am completely confident that the US will not succeed in extraditing me because I have asylum at this embassy. In relation to the broader attack on the rest of our staff, that's still very much in the fight, but we're not going to go down easy.
We just have this breaking news, which says that the Obama administration will make public a previously classified order that directed Verizon Communications to turn over a vast number of Americans' phone records, according to senior U.S. officials. The formerly secret order will be unveiled before a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing that's scheduled to begin in 20 minutes from our broadcast time right now. The order was issued by the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to a subsidiary of Verizon in April. Your response to that finally, Julian, and then we'll let you go.
Well, Edward Snowden already made the order public. So I mean, this is absurd. This is like our release of Guantanamo Bay documents and other documents. These are already made public. And now the administration is going to apparently wave some magical pixie dust to remove the contaminant of it being formally classified by the administration. So, I mean, here we have an example that there's actually no disclosure before the public until there is unauthorized disclosure before the public. If I'm incorrect, and this is not a document that Snowden has already revealed. It is the document. Yeah. So, I mean, there's some magical process going on here where there's holy documents and unholy documents. Holy documents are documents that this classification, state within a state, 5 million people with security clearances, have somehow done something to sprinkle some absurd holy water on. These are just pieces of paper with bits of information on them and bureaucrats putting stamp on them. That's the reality. We've got to remove this religious national security extremism. It is a new religion in the United States and in some other countries. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. It needs to go.
Julian Assange, I want to thank you for being with us, founder and editor-in-chief of WikiLeaks, granted political asylum by Ecuador last year and sought refuge over a year ago at the Ecuadorian embassy in London. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. To read a transcript, listen to or watch this interview, you can go to our website at democracynow.org. When we come back from break, we're going to Fort Meade, where Bradley Manning has been court-martialed, the sentencing beginning today. The sentencing phase of his trial. We'll speak with one of the few reporters, independent reporters, to have spent every day in the courtroom or the media center right next to it to report to the rest of the world what was happening to Bradley Manning. We'll be joined by Alexa. We'll be joined as soon as we come back. Stay with us.